Marcus Rodriguez had seen enough wounded soldiers to fill several lifetimes. As a Navy SEAL medic with 3 tours in Afghanistan and 2 in Iraq, his hands had worked miracles on countless battlefields. Now working as a trauma nurse at Seattle General Hospital, he thought he had left the war behind. The emergency room was busy that rainy Thursday evening, but nothing he couldn't handle. The ambulance sirens cut through the night air like a familiar song. Marcus glanced up from the patient chart he was reviewing, his trained ears already analyzing the urgency in the sound. 2 short bursts, then a long wail. Critical but stable. He moved toward the emergency bay doors, his movements fluid and practiced. "What do we have?" Marcus called out as the paramedics wheeled in their patient. The woman on the stretcher was unconscious, her dark hair matted with blood. She appeared to be in her late 20s, wearing torn jeans and a simple gray sweater that had seen better days. Jane Doe, found unconscious in Pioneer Square, the lead paramedic reported, rattling off vital signs and preliminary observations. "Looks like she took a beating. Multiple contusions, possible concussion, defensive wounds on her arms." Marcus began his assessment, his experienced hands moving with gentle precision. As he examined her injuries, something nagged at him. The pattern of bruising was wrong. These weren't random injuries from a mugging or domestic violence. The defensive wounds on her forearms showed a specific positioning that spoke of training. Real training. He lifted her eyelid to check her pupils with his penlight. Even unconscious, her facial muscles held a tension that reminded him of soldiers he had treated. There was something about the way she carried herself, even in unconsciousness, that seemed familiar. Her breathing pattern was too controlled, too measured for someone who had simply been attacked. As Marcus continued his examination, he noticed calluses on her hands. Not the soft calluses of someone who worked out occasionally, but the hard, specific calluses that came from weapons training. Her knuckles bore small scars that could only come from extensive hand-to-hand combat practice, the kind of scars he had seen on his fellow SEALs. Dr. Sarah Chen, the attending physician, approached the bed. "What's the assessment, Marcus?" "Multiple contusions, possible concussion, but something doesn't add up," Marcus replied, his voice thoughtful. "These injuries, they're not what they appear to be." The woman's eyes suddenly snapped open, immediately alert and scanning her surroundings. Most patients woke up confused and disoriented. This woman's eyes moved with calculated precision, taking in every exit, every person in the room, every potential threat. Her gaze settled on Marcus for a moment, and he saw something there that made his breath catch. Recognition, not of him personally, but of what he was. Her eyes had the same look he had seen in mirrors for years during his military service. The look of someone who had seen combat, who had survived things that most people couldn't imagine. "Ma'am, you're in Seattle General Hospital," Dr. Chen said gently. "You were found unconscious. Can you tell us your name?" The woman's eyes darted between the medical staff, her body tensing slightly. Marcus noticed how she positioned herself on the bed, ready to move despite her injuries. Her silence wasn't from confusion or fear. It was tactical. "I need to check your pupils again," Marcus said quietly, approaching slowly. As he leaned in with the penlight, the woman's hand moved with lightning speed toward his wrist. She stopped herself just before making contact, but Marcus had felt the air displacement from her movement. That wasn't a random defensive gesture. That was a disarm technique, a very specific military disarm technique that Marcus himself had been taught in advanced combat training. "Interesting reflexes," Marcus murmured, stepping back slightly. The woman's eyes narrowed, studying him more intently. He could almost see her mind working, analyzing him the same way he was analyzing her. Dr. Chen continued asking questions, but the woman remained silent. Her vital signs were stable, but Marcus could see the hypervigilance in her posture. She was constantly aware of everyone in the room, tracking movements, assessing threats. This wasn't paranoia from a head injury. This was ingrained tactical awareness. As they moved her to a private room for observation, Marcus noticed how she held her injured left arm. The positioning was all wrong for someone simply protecting a painful limb. She was keeping it in a position that would allow for quick deployment despite the injury. Even hurt, she was maintaining combat readiness. "I'll be checking on you throughout the night," Marcus told her as they settled her into the hospital bed. "If you need anything, just press the call button." For the first time, she spoke. "Thank you." Her voice was steady, controlled. No tremor, no uncertainty, Just 2 words delivered with the kind of calm that came from extensive training in high-stress situations. Marcus left the room but couldn't shake the feeling that he was missing something important. In the hallway, he pulled up her chart on the computer terminal. Jane Doe, approximately 28 years old, no identification, no personal effects, found in Pioneer Square with injuries consistent with an assault. But Marcus knew better. Those weren't assault injuries. They were combat injuries, the kind that came from fighting multiple opponents with advanced training. The bruising patterns, the defensive wounds, even the way she had positioned herself during the fight based on the injury locations, all spoke of someone with serious military or special operations background. He thought about her eyes, the way she had assessed the room, the near-perfect disarm attempt she had aborted at the last second. Everything about her screamed special operations, but she was maintaining complete operational security. Even injured and in a hospital, she was following protocols. Marcus had worked with female special operators before. He knew the signs, the training, the mindset. This woman wasn't just military. She was elite. The question was why she was maintaining her cover in a hospital, and what had happened to put her in Pioneer Square beaten and unconscious. As he returned to his other patients, Marcus couldn't help but wonder who this woman really was and what kind of mission could have gone so wrong that she ended up in his emergency room. One thing was certain. Jane Doe was anything but an ordinary assault victim, and her silence was hiding secrets that could be dangerous for everyone involved. 3 hours into his shift, Marcus found himself checking on the mysterious woman more frequently than his other patients. Each time he entered her room, he discovered something new that confirmed his suspicions. She never truly slept, just dozed lightly while maintaining awareness of her surroundings. When footsteps approached in the hallway, her breathing would change slightly, becoming more controlled and ready. During his 2 a.m. rounds, Marcus noticed she had managed to position herself so she could see both the door and the window, despite her injuries. The IV line was arranged in a way that wouldn't impede quick movement. These weren't conscious decisions from someone recovering from a head injury. These were automatic responses from someone whose survival had depended on such awareness. "How are you feeling?" Marcus asked quietly as he checked her vitals. "Better," she replied, her voice still carefully neutral, but her eyes were studying him with increased intensity. Marcus got the impression she was trying to place him, to figure out his background just as he was trying to understand hers. As he adjusted her IV, she spoke again. "You have steady hands. Good under pressure." It wasn't a casual observation. She was testing him, seeing how he would respond to what sounded like professional assessment. Marcus decided to test her in return. "Combat medic training stays with you," he said simply, watching her reaction. For just a moment, her carefully controlled expression shifted. Recognition flashed in her eyes, followed immediately by something that looked like relief. Then the neutral mask returned, but Marcus had seen enough. "Navy?" she asked so quietly he almost missed it. "SEAL medic. 3 tours Afghanistan, 2 Iraq." Marcus kept his voice equally low. "You?" She was quiet for a long moment, clearly weighing her options. Finally, she spoke. "Army. Similar background. Similar background." That could mean anything from regular Army medic to special forces to something much more classified. But given everything Marcus had observed, he suspected it was the latter. "What happened to you?" he asked. "Wrong place, wrong time," she replied. But there was something in her tone that suggested it had been exactly the right place at exactly the right time, just with unexpected complications. Marcus finished checking her vitals and was about to leave when she spoke again. "Marcus Rodriguez, Navy Cross recipient, saved 12 Marines during the Helmand Province operation in 2018. The blood in Marcus's veins turned cold. Very few people knew about that operation, and even fewer knew his specific role in it. The fact that this woman knew meant she had access to classified military records or had been briefed on personnel involved in special operations. "Who are you?" he asked, his voice taking on a harder edge. "Someone who needed to know who she could trust," she replied. "Your service record suggests you understand operational security." Before Marcus could respond, footsteps echoed in the hallway. Heavy, deliberate footsteps that didn't belong to medical staff. The woman's entire body went rigid, her breathing shifting to combat ready, her eyes fixed on the door with an intensity that made Marcus's own training kick in. "How many people know I'm here?" she whispered urgently. "Just the medical staff and whoever called in your case," Marcus replied. his own instincts now fully alert. The footsteps stopped outside her door. Marcus could see shadows beneath the doorframe, indicating at least 2 people standing in the hallway. Hospital security didn't travel in pairs at this hour unless there was a serious problem. The woman was already moving, sliding out of bed with fluid grace despite her injuries. She disconnected her IV line with practiced efficiency, applying pressure to prevent bleeding. Her movements were completely silent. "Where's the nearest exit?" she whispered. Marcus pointed toward the window. "Fire escape 2 floors down to the parking garage." "They'll have that covered," she replied, her tactical mind clearly working through escape routes. "Service elevator?" "End of the hall, but it requires a keycard." She looked at him intently. "I need your help." Before Marcus could respond, the door handle turned slowly. Someone was trying to enter quietly, which was definitely not standard hospital procedure. The woman pressed herself against the wall beside the door, her body coiled and ready despite her injuries. Marcus made a split-second decision that would change everything. Instead of calling for security, he moved to block the door's opening path and faced whoever was coming through. 2 men in dark suits entered the room, their eyes immediately scanning for the patient. They weren't hospital security or police. Their movements, their awareness, everything about them screamed federal agents or military intelligence. "Where is she?" the first man asked, his voice carrying authority and barely contained urgency. "Who?" Marcus replied, playing dumb while positioning himself to give the woman behind the door more time. The woman brought in earlier. "Jane Doe, where is she?" "Transferred to another facility," Marcus lied smoothly. "About an hour ago. Some kind of federal custody issue." The second man was already on his radio, confirming Marcus's story with someone. In the brief moment of distraction, the woman behind the door caught Marcus's eye and pointed toward the hallway. She was telling him she was going to move. "Which facility?" the first man demanded. "I don't know. Above my pay grade." The transfer was handled by administration. The men exchanged glances, clearly frustrated. As they turned to leave, Marcus heard the softest whisper of movement behind him. The woman was gone, vanished as silently as smoke. Through his peripheral vision, he caught a glimpse of her slipping into the supply closet across the hall. After the men left, Marcus waited several minutes before casually walking to the supply closet. He found her inside, pressed against the wall behind shelves of medical supplies, completely hidden from casual view. "Federal agents?" she asked quietly. "That would be my guess. They knew you were here, knew to ask for Jane Doe specifically." She closed her eyes for a moment, her jaw tightening. "It's worse than I thought." "What's worse?" "What's really going on?" She looked at him with an expression that mixed gratitude with deep concern. "I can't tell you everything, for your own safety. But I need to get out of here, and I need medical supplies." Marcus studied her face, seeing the genuine urgency there. His military training told him to ask more questions, to understand the full situation before committing. But his instincts, honed by years of combat, told him this woman was one of the good guys in serious trouble. "What do you need?" he asked. The relief in her eyes was unmistakable. "Antibiotics, pain medication, suture supplies, and clean clothes if you can manage it." As Marcus gathered the supplies, she continued to watch the hallway through a crack in the door. Her hypervigilance was even more pronounced now, her body language screaming that whatever operation she had been involved in had gone catastrophically wrong. "There's a staff exit on the ground floor," Marcus whispered as he handed her a medical bag filled with supplies. "Takes you directly to the employee parking area. Less surveillance." "Thank you," she said, and for the first time her voice carried genuine emotion. "You don't know what this means." As she prepared to leave, Marcus made another decision that surprised even him. "If you need medical help again, here's my personal number," he said, scribbling on a piece of paper. "Day or night?" She took the paper, studying his face one more time. "You're a good man, Marcus Rodriguez. I hope I haven't put you in danger." Before he could respond, she was gone, slipping out of the supply closet and down the hallway like a shadow. Marcus returned to his duties but spent the rest of his shift wondering who the mysterious woman really was, and what kind of mission had brought federal agents hunting for her in the middle of the night. 2 days passed without incident, but Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched. Nothing obvious, just small things that his military training had taught him to notice. The same car in the hospital parking lot for multiple shifts. A man in a coffee shop reading the same newspaper page for 40 minutes. subtle surveillance that suggested someone was very interested in his movements. On Saturday morning, his phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Coffee shop on Pine Street. 2 p.m. Come alone. Thank you for everything. A friend. Marcus stared at the message, knowing immediately who had sent it. Part of him wanted to ignore it, to pretend the whole incident had never happened. But the larger part, the part that had driven him to become a SEAL medic, knew he needed to see this through. The coffee shop was busy with weekend customers, providing good cover. Marcus ordered his usual black coffee and found a table near the back where he could watch the entrance. He had been sitting for 10 minutes when she appeared, seemingly materializing from the crowd like a ghost. She looked completely different. Gone were the hospital clothes and battered appearance. Now she wore dark jeans, a simple black sweater, and had her hair pulled back in a way that changed the entire shape of her face. Without the injuries and blood, Marcus could see she was actually quite striking, with intelligent green eyes and the kind of quiet confidence that commanded attention without seeking it. "You came," she said, sliding into the seat across from him. "I wasn't sure you'd show," Marcus replied. "Those men who came looking for you seemed pretty determined." They were. She wrapped her hands around her coffee cup, and Marcus noticed her knuckles were still slightly swollen from whatever fight had landed her in his emergency room. "I owe you an explanation. You don't owe me anything, but I'd like to understand what I got involved in." She was quiet for a moment, clearly choosing her words carefully. "My name is Sarah Chen. Captain Sarah Chen, Army Special Forces, currently assigned to a joint task force that officially doesn't exist." The name hit Marcus like a physical blow. Sarah Chen. He had heard that name before, whispered in the kind of military circles where legends were made. She was supposedly one of the best special operations officers of her generation, with a record that was largely classified but rumored to include operations that had prevented several major terrorist attacks. "You're supposed to be dead," Marcus said quietly. A bitter smile crossed her face. "According to official records, Captain Sarah Chen died in a helicopter crash in Syria 6 months ago. Very convenient for everyone involved. But here you are, getting beaten up in Seattle. Here I am, discovering that the mission that supposedly killed me was actually designed to silence me permanently." Her voice carried a weight that spoke of betrayal and disillusionment. "I found something I wasn't supposed to find, and someone very powerful wanted to make sure I could never share it." Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. "What did you find?" Sarah looked around the coffee shop, her eyes automatically scanning for potential threats before returning to his face. "Evidence of a weapons trafficking operation. Not just any weapons. Advanced military technology being sold to the highest bidder, including some very unfriendly governments. That's serious, but not necessarily worth killing someone over. Unless the operation was being run by people with access to the highest levels of military intelligence. People who could arrange for inconvenient officers to die in helicopter crashes." The implications of what she was saying began to sink in. Marcus had heard rumors during his service about operations that went off the books, about military personnel who asked too many questions and found themselves reassigned to dangerous missions. But this suggested something much more systematic and corrupt. "The men who came to the hospital," Marcus said. "They weren't federal agents, were they?" "Oh, they were federal agents. That's what makes this so complicated. Some of them are working for the people I'm trying to expose. Some of them are legitimately trying to find me, because they think I've gone rogue. And some of them might actually be on my side, but I have no way of knowing which is which. So you're on your own." "Completely, which is why what you did the other night meant so much. I haven't had anyone I could trust in months." Marcus studied her face, seeing the exhaustion beneath the controlled exterior. "What's your plan?" "I have evidence. Documented proof of the weapon sales, financial records, communications between the conspirators. But I need to get it to someone I can trust, someone with enough authority to act on it. Why not just release it to the media? Because half of what I have is classified at levels that would make me a traitor for revealing it, regardless of the reason. I need to find a way to expose the corruption without destroying legitimate national security operations." Marcus was quiet for several minutes, processing everything she had told him. Finally, he spoke. "How can I help?" "You've already done more than enough. In fact, you've probably done too much. Those men at the hospital will have checked the security footage by now. They'll know you helped me escape. As if summoned by her words, Marcus's phone buzzed with an incoming call. The caller ID showed his supervisor at the hospital. "Marcus, we need you to come in for a meeting with hospital administration," his supervisor said without preamble. "There are some federal agents here with questions about a patient you treated Thursday night." Marcus felt his stomach drop. "I'm scheduled off today." "I know, but they're insisting it's urgent. Something about a security matter." "I'll be there in an hour," Marcus replied, ending the call. Sarah had heard enough of the conversation to understand. "They're coming for you because of me." "I'm sorry, Marcus. I never wanted to drag you into this." "It's too late for that now," Marcus said grimly. "The question is, what do we do about it?" "We? There is no we. You need to distance yourself from me as much as possible. Tell them you were just doing your job, that you have no idea who I really was. And let you face this alone? I don't think so." Sarah leaned forward, her voice intense. "You don't understand what you're up against. These people have already killed to protect their secret. They won't hesitate to kill again." "Then maybe it's time to stop running and start fighting back," Marcus replied. "You said you have evidence. What if we could get it to the right people? I've been trying to figure out who the right people are for months. Everyone I trusted is either dead or compromised." Marcus was quiet for a moment, then pulled out his phone and scrolled through his contacts. "What about someone outside the normal chain of command? Someone with credibility but no direct connection to military intelligence? Who did you have in mind?" "Senator Rebecca Martinez. She chairs the Senate Armed Services Committee, and she's built her career on exposing military corruption. Plus, she's a former Marine. She understands operational security." Sarah's eyes lit up with the first genuine hope Marcus had seen from her. That might actually work. But getting to her won't be easy. She's probably being watched too, just in case I try to make contact. Then we'll have to be creative about how we approach her. "We again." "Marcus, I'm serious about the danger. If you help me with this, there's no going back. Your life as you know it will be over." Marcus thought about his comfortable job at the hospital, his quiet apartment, his safe and predictable civilian life. Then he thought about the oath he had taken as a SEAL, about the brothers he had lost in combat, about the principles that had driven him to serve his country in the first place. "Some things are more important than safety," he said finally. "Besides, I've been getting bored with civilian life anyway." For the first time since he had met her, Sarah smiled genuinely. "You know, I think we might actually have a chance." As they left the coffee shop separately, Marcus felt the familiar rush of adrenaline that came with dangerous missions. He was back in the game, and this time the stakes couldn't be higher. The comfortable life he had built since leaving the military was about to be destroyed, but he found he didn't care. Some battles were worth fighting regardless of the personal cost. The war was just beginning. Marcus arrived at the hospital an hour later to find 2 federal agents waiting in the conference room with his supervisor and the hospital administrator. The agents introduced themselves as Special Agent Williams and Special Agent Foster, though Marcus suspected those weren't their real names. They had the look of career intelligence operatives, professionally friendly but with eyes that missed nothing. "Mr. Rodriguez, we understand you treated a Jane Doe patient Thursday night," Agent Williams began, consulting a tablet. "We need to know everything about your interaction with her." Marcus had spent the drive to the hospital preparing for this moment. "Standard trauma protocol. She came in unconscious with multiple contusions. We stabilized her, kept her for observation. And then, she was transferred to another facility Friday morning. Federal custody, according to administration." Agent Foster leaned forward. "No such transfer was authorized by any federal agency. The patient disappeared from her room sometime during the night shift." Marcus tried to look surprised. "Disappeared? How is that possible?" "She had a head injury." "That's what we're trying to determine," Williams said. "You were her primary nurse. Did she say anything? Do anything unusual?" "She was mostly unresponsive. Answered basic questions about pain levels, that sort of thing. Nothing unusual for a head trauma patient." The agents exchanged glances. Foster pulled out a photograph and slid it across the table. It was a military photo of Sarah in dress uniform, looking younger but unmistakably the same woman. "Have you ever seen this person before Thursday night?" Marcus studied the photo, letting his eyes linger as if trying to place her. "No, I don't think so. Should I have?" "This woman is a fugitive," Williams said. "She's wanted in connection with the theft of classified military documents and the deaths of several federal agents. The words hit Marcus like a physical blow, but he kept his expression neutral. Either these agents were lying, or there was much more to Sarah's story than she had told him. I had no idea, Marcus said. She seemed like just another assault victim. Mr. Rodriguez, Foster said, his tone becoming more pointed. This woman is extremely dangerous. She has specialized military training and has already killed to protect her secrets. If you have any information about where she might have gone, any contact she might have made, you need to tell us now. I wish I could help, but I really don't know anything beyond the medical care I provided. Agent Williams made a note on his tablet. We'll need to examine the security footage from that night and we'll want to speak with you again if we have more questions. Of course, I want to help in any way I can. After the agents left, Marcus's supervisor pulled him aside. Marcus, is there anything you're not telling me? Those agents seem to think you might know more than you're saying. I treated a patient who turned out to be someone important, that's all. I had no idea who she really was. His supervisor nodded, but Marcus could see the doubt in his eyes. The comfortable relationship he had built with his colleagues was already beginning to fray. That evening, Marcus drove to a small park outside the city where he and Sarah had arranged to meet. The secluded location gave them room to talk without surveillance, though Marcus was beginning to realize that nowhere was truly safe anymore. Sarah was waiting on a bench near the lake, her posture alert despite her casual appearance. As Marcus approached, he could see the tension in her shoulders. How did it go? She asked without preamble. About as well as expected. They showed me your military photo, told me you were a fugitive wanted for stealing classified documents and killing federal agents. Sarah's jaw tightened. They're getting desperate. Those charges are completely fabricated, designed to make anyone who helps me look like they're aiding a terrorist. Are they? Marcus asked quietly. Completely fabricated? She turned to look at him directly, her green eyes intense. I have never killed a federal agent. The classified documents I took are evidence of the weapons trafficking operation. Everything else is lies designed to discredit me and justify hunting me down. Marcus studied her face, using all his experience reading people in high-stress situations. He saw anger, frustration, and exhaustion, but no deception. His instincts told him she was telling the truth. Okay, I believe you. But this is bigger than we thought. They're not just trying to silence you, they're trying to destroy your credibility completely. Which means we need to move fast. The longer I stay hidden, the more time they have to build their case against me. Marcus nodded. I've been thinking about how to approach Senator Martinez. She has a public appearance scheduled Tuesday evening at the University of Washington. Some kind of veterans forum, too public. Too many variables. Maybe, but it's also the last place they'd expect you to make contact. And with all those veterans around, you'd blend in. Sarah was quiet for several minutes, clearly working through the tactical implications. It could work, she said finally. But I'd need a way to get the evidence to her without being seen. And I'd need backup in case things go wrong. What kind of backup? The kind that involves weapons and the willingness to use them. Marcus felt a chill. Sarah, I'm a medic, not an operator. My shooting skills are adequate, but if you're expecting me to get into a firefight with federal agents, I'm not expecting you to do anything you're not comfortable with, she replied. But I need to be realistic about what we're facing. These people have already tried to kill me once. They won't hesitate to do it again. As if to emphasize her point, Marcus's phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. Stop looking for someone who doesn't want to be found. Your cooperation would be appreciated. Sarah read the message over his shoulder. They're escalating. That's not a request, it's a threat, so what do? We accelerate our timeline. The Veterans Forum is Tuesday. That gives us 3 days to prepare. Prepare how? Sarah stood up from the bench, her military bearing more evident now. First, we get you some basic operational security training. If you're going to be involved in this, you need to know how to avoid surveillance, how to communicate securely, and how to spot threats. And second, we figure out how to get close enough to Senator Martinez to hand her evidence that could bring down a conspiracy involving some of the most powerful people in the military intelligence community. As they walked back to their cars, Marcus couldn't help but think about how completely his life had changed in just 4 days. Last week, his biggest worry had been hospital politics and weekend plans. Now he was involved in what amounted to a shadow war against his own government. Sarah, he said as they reached the parking area, there's something I need to know. Why me? You could have escaped from the hospital without my help. You could have handled this alone. Why did you choose to trust me? She paused at her car door, considering the question. Because when you were treating me, I saw something in your face that I haven't seen in a long time. Genuine compassion without agenda. In my world, that's rarer than you might think. And now? Now I've probably destroyed your life by involving you in this. But I hope that when it's over, you'll feel it was worth it. As Marcus drove home, he thought about her words. His comfortable civilian life was indeed destroyed. His job was probably gone, his safety was certainly compromised, and he was now a target of federal agents who believed he was helping a dangerous fugitive. But for the first time since leaving the military, he felt like he was fighting for something that truly mattered. The mission was dangerous, probably hopeless, and might get them both killed. But it was also the right thing to do. Marcus Rodriguez, the trauma nurse, was gone. Marcus Rodriguez, the SEAL medic, was back, and he had work to do. The next morning, Marcus woke to find his apartment had been searched. It was done professionally, almost invisibly, but his military training had taught him to notice when things were slightly out of place. A book turned the wrong way on a shelf. A drawer not quite closed completely. Someone had been through his belongings with surgical precision. His phone rang as he was checking his bedroom for surveillance devices. The caller ID showed his sister Maria, who lived in San Diego. "Marcus, thank God you answered," she said, her voice tight with worry. "There were men here asking about you. Federal agents. They wanted to know about your friends, your habits, your political views." Marcus felt his blood turn cold. "What did you tell them?" "The truth. That you're a good man who served his country and now works as a nurse. But Marcus, they seem to think you might be involved in something dangerous. What's going on?" "I can't explain right now, but I need you to be careful. Don't talk to any more agents without a lawyer present. And if anyone approaches you claiming to be my friend, don't trust them. You're scaring me." "Good. Being scared will keep you safe. I love you, Maria. I have to go." Marcus ended the call and immediately powered off his phone. They were expanding the pressure, bringing his family into it. The message was clear. Cooperate or everyone he cared about would become a target. He drove to the meeting point Sarah had specified, a small warehouse district where they could talk without being overheard. She was waiting inside an abandoned building, and Marcus could see she hadn't slept. Her clothes were different again, her hair styled differently, but the exhaustion in her eyes was unmistakable. "They searched my apartment," Marcus said without preamble. "And they questioned my sister." Sarah's expression darkened. "They're trying to isolate you, make you feel like helping me will destroy everything you care about." "Will it?" "Probably. These people don't believe in proportional response. They'll keep escalating until you either give up or they eliminate the threat permanently." Marcus sat down on a crate, suddenly feeling the weight of what he had gotten into. "Maybe I should reconsider. If something happens to my family because of this..." "I understand," Sarah said quietly, "and I won't blame you if you walk away. This isn't your fight, isn't it? You said these people are selling advanced weapons to enemy governments. How many Americans will die because of those weapons?" "I don't know. Potentially hundreds, maybe thousands." Marcus was quiet for several minutes, thinking about his fellow SEALs who had died in combat, about the young soldiers he had treated in field hospitals, about the price of betrayal at the highest levels of government. "Tell me about the evidence," he said finally. Sarah pulled out a small encrypted drive, financial records showing payments from foreign governments to shell companies controlled by a group calling themselves the Prometheus Syndicate. Shipping manifests for weapons that officially don't exist. Communications between syndicate members discussing specific sales. Who's involved? A colonel in military intelligence, 2 defense contractors, someone high up in the CIA, and at least 3 members of Congress who sit on defense appropriations committees. The scope of the conspiracy took Marcus's breath away. Jesus, no wonder they want you dead. The weapons aren't just standard military equipment either. We're talking about prototype drone technology, advanced surveillance systems, next-generation cyber warfare tools. The kind of technology that could shift the balance of power in entire regions. And you stumbled onto this how? Sarah's expression grew grim. "I was part of a team investigating arms dealers in Syria. We thought we were tracking terrorists selling stolen American weapons. Instead, we discovered that some of those weapons were being deliberately provided through back channels. When I started asking questions, my teammates started dying. The helicopter crash wasn't an accident. The other 3 members of my team were on that helicopter. I was supposed to be with them, but I'd stayed behind to follow up on a lead. When I heard about the crash, I knew I was next. Marcus studied the encrypted drive in her hands. How do we know Senator Martinez will believe this? It's going to sound like a conspiracy theory. Because she's been investigating defense contractor irregularities for months. She just doesn't know how deep it goes. This evidence will connect dots she's been trying to connect. Assuming we can get it to her without getting killed in the process. Sarah stood up and walked to the window, checking the street outside. I've been thinking about the forum tomorrow night. It's going to be heavily secured, but that works in our favor. They won't expect us to make our move in the middle of a federal security perimeter. What's the plan? You're going to attend as a veteran. Register online today, show up early, blend in with the crowd. I'll be there too, but separately. When Martinez finishes her prepared remarks and opens for questions, you're going to ask a very specific question, which is, you're going to ask her about Project Prometheus and defense contractor accountability. That will be my signal that you're in position and ready. Marcus felt his palms sweating. And then I make contact and hand over the evidence. If everything goes according to plan, we walk out of there and Senator Martinez goes public with the biggest military corruption scandal in decades. And if everything doesn't go according to plan, Sarah turned back to him, her expression serious, then we probably don't walk out of there at all. Marcus spent the rest of the day preparing. He registered for the Veterans Forum online, using his real name and military credentials. If they were monitoring registrations, his attendance wouldn't seem suspicious. He also sent a coded message to his sister, telling her to visit their aunt in Phoenix and stay there until she heard from him again. That evening, he met Sarah one final time at a diner outside the city. She looked different again, this time styled to look like a college student with dark-rimmed glasses and her hair in a ponytail. Her ability to change her appearance was impressive, but Marcus could see the strain wearing on her. "Are you sure about this?" he asked as they sat in a corner booth. "I'm sure that if we don't try, more people will die. The weapons they're selling aren't just ending up with foreign governments. Some of them are making their way to terrorist organizations and criminal cartels. Have you considered that this might be a trap? That they know we're planning something? Every day. But we're running out of options. Every day I stay hidden, they get stronger and more confident. Eventually, they'll track me down anyway." Marcus nodded, understanding the tactical reality. "What happens after?" "Assuming we succeed, I testify before Congress, probably go into protective custody while the investigation unfolds. You'll likely need protection too, at least until the major players are arrested. And if we don't succeed?" Sarah reached across the table and squeezed his hand. "Then at least we tried to do the right thing. Sometimes that has to be enough." As they prepared to leave, Sarah handed him a small earpiece. "Tomorrow night, stay connected on this frequency. If something goes wrong, if you see anything suspicious, let me know immediately." "What about you? What if you're the one who spots trouble?" "Then I'll handle it and try to give you enough warning to get out safely." Marcus pocketed the earpiece, knowing that tomorrow night would determine not just their fate, but potentially the fate of countless others whose lives hung in the balance of this conspiracy. As he drove home, Marcus thought about the strange journey that had brought him to this point. 4 days ago, he had been a trauma nurse treating what he thought was an assault victim. Now he was preparing to risk everything to expose a conspiracy that reached the highest levels of government. The irony wasn't lost on him. He had left the military to escape the danger and moral complexity of combat operations. Instead, he had found himself in the middle of a battle that was more dangerous and morally complex than anything he had faced overseas. But for the first time in years, Marcus felt like he was exactly where he needed to be. Tomorrow night he would find out if courage and determination were enough to overcome corruption and betrayal. Either way, he would face it with the same honor that had driven him to serve his country in the first place. The University of Washington campus buzzed with activity as veterans and their families gathered for Senator Martinez's forum. Marcus arrived early, dressed in business casual clothes with his military service pin on his lapel. The venue was Kane Hall, a large auditorium that would hold about 400 people. Security was visible but not overwhelming, typical for a congressional event at a public university. Marcus found a seat in the middle section, close enough to ask questions but not so close as to draw attention. As people filed in, he scanned the crowd for Sarah but couldn't spot her. That was probably intentional. Her ability to blend in was remarkable. Senator Rebecca Martinez took the stage at exactly 7 o'clock. She was a small woman in her 50s, but her presence filled the room. Her opening remarks focused on veterans' health care and educational benefits, topics that resonated strongly with the audience. Marcus found himself genuinely impressed by her knowledge and passion. "Before we open for questions," Senator Martinez said, "I want to address something that's been weighing on my mind. There have been disturbing reports about irregularities in defense contracting, about taxpayer money being wasted or worse, misused. I want every veteran in this room to know that your service matters too much for us to tolerate corruption in the systems meant to support you." Marcus felt his pulse quicken. She was already thinking about defense contractor issues. Sarah had been right about her being receptive to their evidence. The question and answer session began with typical veteran concerns: healthcare wait times, educational benefit processing delays, job placement programs. Marcus waited, watching for Sarah's signal while listening to the senator's thoughtful responses. 20 minutes into the Q&A, Marcus saw her. Sarah was sitting in the back left section, styled as a graduate student. She caught his eye briefly and gave an almost imperceptible nod. It was time. Marcus raised his hand and was recognized by the moderator. He stood, his military bearing automatic despite his nerves. "Senator Martinez, thank you for your service to veterans. My question concerns defense contractor accountability, specifically regarding something called Project Prometheus. Are you aware of any irregularities in how advanced military technology is being distributed or sold?" The reaction in the room was immediate. Marcus heard several sharp intakes of breath from the audience, and he noticed security personnel becoming more alert. But it was Senator Martinez's response that surprised him most. "That's a very specific question," she said, her voice carefully controlled. "Can you elaborate on what prompted your inquiry?" Before Marcus could respond, he heard Sarah's voice in his earpiece. "We have a problem. Multiple surveillance teams just became active. This was a setup." Marcus's blood turned cold, but he forced himself to remain calm. "I've heard rumors about weapons being sold to unauthorized buyers. I was hoping you might be investigating these allegations." Senator Martinez studied his face intently. "I think we should continue this conversation privately after the forum. Please see my staff afterward. Movement at all exits." Sarah's voice whispered in his ear. "They're positioning to contain the entire venue. We need to abort." But before Marcus could react, Agent Williams from the hospital meeting appeared at the end of his row, moving toward him with purposeful intent. Other agents were becoming visible throughout the auditorium, converging on his position. Marcus made a split-second decision. Instead of trying to flee, he remained standing and spoke loudly enough for the entire audience to hear. "Senator, I'm a Navy SEAL veteran and trauma nurse. 3 days ago, I treated a patient who claimed to have evidence of a massive weapons trafficking conspiracy involving military officials and defense contractors. That patient was Captain Sarah Chen, who is supposed to be dead but is very much alive and has documentation proving American weapons are being sold to enemy governments." The auditorium erupted in chaos. Audience members began shouting questions. Security rushed toward Marcus, and Senator Martinez stood frozen at the podium. In the confusion, Marcus saw Sarah moving toward the stage from the opposite side of the auditorium. "Marcus Rodriguez, you're under arrest," Agent Williams shouted over the noise. "Reaching for handcuffs, for what crime?" Senator Martinez's voice cut through the chaos like a blade. She had stepped forward to the edge of the stage, her authority commanding attention even from the federal agents. "Senator, this man is harboring a fugitive wanted for treason," Williams replied, but his voice lacked conviction. "Then charge him properly and read him his rights," Martinez snapped. "This is still America, and this is my event. If you're going to arrest someone, you'll do it legally and publicly." In the moment of hesitation that followed, Sarah reached the stage. She vaulted onto the platform with fluid grace, landing next to Senator Martinez with the encrypted drive in her hand. "Senator Martinez, I'm Captain Sarah Chen. I have evidence of weapons trafficking that needs to reach the Senate Armed Services Committee immediately." The auditorium fell silent, except for the sound of more federal agents rushing toward the stage. Sarah pressed the drive into Martinez's hand just as the first agent reached the platform. "Captain Chen, you're under arrest for treason, theft of classified documents, and the murder of federal agents," the agent announced. "What federal agents?" Senator Martinez demanded, still holding the drive. "I want specifics. Names, dates, circumstances." The agent hesitated, clearly not prepared for direct questioning from a sitting senator. In that moment of uncertainty, Sarah spoke directly to the crowd. "My name is Captain Sarah Chen, Army Special Forces. 6 months ago, I discovered that members of our own military and intelligence services were selling advanced weapons to foreign governments and terrorist organizations. When I tried to report this through proper channels, they arranged for my team to be killed in a helicopter crash. I was supposed to die with them." The audience was riveted, phones out recording everything. Marcus realized that Sarah had turned their capture into a public revelation. Whatever happened next, the story was now in the open. "I have financial records, shipping manifests, and communications proving that a group calling themselves the Prometheus Syndicate has sold over $200 million worth of classified military technology to buyers including Iranian intelligence, Russian military contractors, and at least 3 terrorist organizations." Senator Martinez stepped forward, positioning herself between Sarah and the advancing agents. "As chairman of the Senate Armed Services Committee, I'm placing this evidence under congressional protection pending a full investigation. Senator, with respect, you don't have the authority to interfere with a federal arrest," Agent Williams said, though he had stopped advancing. "Actually, I do," Martinez replied firmly. "Congressional oversight of military and intelligence operations is exactly my authority. Captain Chen, I'm placing you under protective custody of the Senate Armed Services Committee, pending testimony before Congress." The standoff lasted several tense seconds before Agent Williams spoke into his radio. Whatever response he received made his expression darken. "Senator, we'll need to coordinate with congressional security on the transfer of custody," he said finally. Marcus felt Sarah's hand briefly touch his shoulder as agents moved to restrain him. "Thank you," she whispered, "for everything." As handcuffs clicked around Marcus's wrists, he looked up at Senator Martinez. She gave him an almost imperceptible nod of acknowledgement before turning back to address the crowd. "Ladies and gentlemen, what you've witnessed tonight is why our democracy depends on brave individuals willing to speak truth to power, regardless of personal cost. Captain Chen's allegations will be thoroughly investigated, and if proven true, those responsible will face the full weight of justice." As Marcus was led from the auditorium, he could hear the senator continuing to address the crowd, promising transparency and accountability. The plan had worked, though not at all as they had expected. The evidence was in the right hands. Sarah was alive and under congressional protection, and the story was public. Marcus Rodriguez, the trauma nurse, was definitely gone forever. Whether Marcus Rodriguez, the whistleblower, would survive what came next remained to be seen. But as he was placed in the back of a federal vehicle, he felt something he hadn't experienced since leaving the military: the satisfaction of a mission accomplished, regardless of personal cost. 6 months later, Marcus stood outside the federal courthouse in Washington, D.C., adjusting his tie one final time before entering. The morning air was crisp with autumn promise, and the steps were crowded with reporters, cameras, and spectators waiting for the verdict in what had become known as the Prometheus conspiracy trial. The past half-year had been a whirlwind of congressional hearings, grand jury testimony, and federal protection. Marcus had lost his job at the hospital, his apartment, and his quiet civilian life. But he had gained something more valuable: the knowledge that sometimes one person's courage really could make a difference. Sarah emerged from a black SUV at the curb, flanked by federal marshals but no longer treated as a prisoner. She wore a simple blue dress and had let her hair grow to its natural length. The haunted look that had marked her features during their first meeting was gone, replaced by the quiet confidence of someone who had fought the good fight and won. "Ready for this?" she asked as they met at the courthouse entrance. "As ready as anyone can be for watching corrupt officials get sentenced for treason," Marcus replied with a slight smile. The courtroom was packed. In the defendant's section sat Colonel James Harrison, former military intelligence officer; David Kramer and Susan Walsh, defense contractors; CIA Deputy Director Robert Chen, and 2 former congressmen. Their faces showed the resignation of people who knew their appeals had failed, and their sentences were about to be substantial. Senator Martinez sat in the gallery, having become something of a national hero for her handling of the crisis. The investigation she had launched had uncovered not just the Prometheus Syndicate, but 3 other corruption networks within the defense establishment. Her promised transparency had become a model for congressional oversight. Judge Eleanor Whitman entered, and the courtroom rose. She was a small woman with steel gray hair, but her reputation for fairness and her intolerance for corruption had made her the perfect choice to oversee this case. In the matter of United States versus Harrison et al., Judge Whitman began, the court has reviewed all testimony, evidence, and pre-sentencing reports. The defendants have been found guilty of conspiracy to commit treason, illegal arms trafficking, murder of federal agents, and numerous other charges. Marcus felt Sarah tense beside him as the judge continued. The murders referenced included Sarah's 3 teammates, who had died not in an accidental helicopter crash, but in a deliberate assassination disguised as mechanical failure. Colonel Harrison, you violated the oath you swore to defend this nation. Your actions resulted in American weapons being used against American allies and potentially against American forces. The court sentences you to life in federal prison without possibility of parole. The sentences continued down the line. The defense contractors received 30 years each. The CIA official got 25 years. The congressman, who had provided legislative cover for the operation, received 15 years each. When the sentencing was complete, Judge Whitman addressed the courtroom directly. This case represents both a profound betrayal of trust and a triumph of justice. It reminds us that our democracy depends on individuals willing to sacrifice personal safety to protect the greater good. Captain Chen and Mr. Rodriguez, your courage in exposing this conspiracy has undoubtedly saved countless lives. As they filed out of the courtroom, Marcus was approached by a familiar figure. Agent Williams, who had arrested him at the University Forum, extended his hand. Mr. Rodriguez, I owe you an apology. When we were hunting Captain Chen, we believed she was the criminal. The investigation proved how wrong we were. Marcus shook his hand. You were doing your job based on the information you had. That's all any of us can do. For what it's worth, the Bureau is implementing new protocols for investigating allegations of high-level corruption. Your case showed us how easily good agents can be manipulated by the very people we're supposed to catch. Outside the courthouse, Marcus and Sarah found themselves alone for the first time in months. The media attention, the security details, and the constant legal proceedings had made private conversation nearly impossible. So what now? Marcus asked. Back to the Army for you? Sarah shook her head. I've been offered a position with Senator Martinez's office, overseeing defense contractor accountability. Turns out there's a lot of work to do in that area. And I've been offered a job with the Veterans Administration, helping to design new protocols for protecting whistleblowers who report military corruption. Marcus added, apparently my combination of medical and military experience makes me uniquely qualified. They walked together toward the Lincoln Memorial, both lost in thought about how dramatically their lives had changed. The woman who had appeared in Marcus's emergency room 6 months ago as a battered Jane Doe was now a national hero. The trauma nurse who had simply tried to help a patient was now a Federal Witness Protection Program graduate with a new career in government oversight. Do you ever regret it? Sarah asked as they reached the steps of the memorial. Giving up your quiet life for all this chaos? Marcus considered the question seriously. I regret that it was necessary. I regret that people we trusted with our national security betrayed that trust. But I don't regret helping you expose the truth. Even though it cost you everything you had built since leaving the military, what I had built was comfortable, but it wasn't meaningful. Marcus gestured back toward the courthouse. This actually mattered. How many lives were saved because those weapons aren't reaching terrorist organizations anymore? Sarah smiled. The first completely genuine smile he had seen from her. You know, when I first saw you in that emergency room, I thought you were just another medical professional doing his job. I had no idea you would become the most important ally I could have asked for. And I thought you were just another assault victim who needed medical care. Funny how things work out. They stood in comfortable silence for several minutes, watching tourists and school groups climb the memorial steps. Finally, Sarah spoke again. I have something for you. She reached into her purse and pulled out a small box. It's not much, but I wanted you to have it. Inside the box was a simple silver medallion with an inscription, for courage in the face of impossible odds. S.C. Sarah. You didn't need to? Yes, I did. You risked everything to help someone you barely knew, with no guarantee that it would make any difference. That's the definition of heroism. Marcus pocketed the medallion, feeling its weight as both a gift and a responsibility. So what's next for us? Do we stay in touch or do we go back to being strangers who happen to save the country together? I was hoping we could be friends who happen to save the country together, Sarah replied. I could use more people in my life who understand that sometimes the right thing to do is also the dangerous thing to do. As they parted ways that afternoon, Marcus reflected on the strange journey that had brought them together. A wounded warrior appearing in his emergency room had changed his life completely, but it had also restored his sense of purpose. He was no longer just a medical professional treating symptoms. He was someone who could help heal the deeper wounds that threatened the country he had sworn to protect. The comfortable life of Marcus Rodriguez, the trauma nurse, was gone forever. But Marcus Rodriguez, the public servant, was just beginning. Sometimes the most important battles weren't fought on foreign battlefields, but in hospital rooms, courthouses, and government offices where individuals chose between personal safety and public good. Walking back through Washington, Marcus realized he had found something he hadn't known he was looking for, a mission worthy of the oath he had taken as a young SEAL. The war on corruption would never truly end, but at least now he knew which side he was fighting for, and he had allies he could trust with his life. Some stories end with the hero riding off into the sunset. This one ended with the heroes going back to work, ready for whatever crisis would require their courage next. In a democracy, that's exactly how it should be.